looking at hiring beyond the people that you are looking traditionally at, starting to look at people from the different perspectives. If you want to put it in another way, people looking at people from their intrinsic value, from the value deep within them, not just from stereotypes. But unfortunately, we have lots of stereotypes because when you look at me, you're only going to have one or two stereotypes. Sometimes it's unconsciously, sometimes it's consciously. Sometimes we can go beyond it, sometimes we just cannot because we are stuck in that world. So hopefully by the end of today, I will try to influence a bit of how you see people, maybe looking at people beyond that. I use this example more on this slide more because when I've once been to an event where a very important politician in Edmonton was talking about making a big announcement on multiculturalism, and one of her assistants who came with her walked through every reporter in the room and came right straight to me and asked me the question, "What are you doing here?" So that's exactly the kind of situation I'm talking about. But this same department just a couple of weeks ago, they were asking us to cover that event. So it was easier to make that connection to see me as not as a reporter at that moment, but when they were doing that without looking at me physically. So I didn't look at the reporter physically, but from the communications on social media or communications on email, I look like somebody who can be of help. So it's looking at it beyond that. So it was a bit unconscious, but those are some of the things. And that is because our worldviews are so different. It influences the people we meet, it influences the people we attract around us, it influences the people we hire, it influences the people we appreciate with promotion, it influences the food we hate, the food we like, the places we go to, it influences everything we do. And perhaps the reason why I have a job today. Because that exists. So it's often said that the higher you go, the whiter it becomes, which is true because in organizations that you have a lot of frontline staff are multicultural, you'll be surprised to realize that above the top level management is not. And that is why a lot of people describe it this way. And how do you move beyond this is exactly the question. And why should we move beyond this is the biggest question that we should be asking. Why should we even change? This is why we should change. 1 in every 5 Canadians, from 2017 Statistics Canada says 1 in every 5 Canadians is of immigrant background, which means that 1 in every 5 Canadians is connected to a recent immigrant. That's a huge number. But that may not mean more if you say so because this is just 2017 or 2018. So, but the statistics go further to say by 2036, that ratio will be 1 in every 3 Canadians. So if that doesn't scare you, this is another thing that may really concern you. In 1966, 2 times more people were entering the job market than those that were leaving. To put it in simple terms, it means more people between the ages of 15 and 24 were looking for jobs and getting into the job market than those who have 65 years and above. The next slide may throw some light on that. So since 2016, more people are headed for retirement than entering the job market. So this tells you 2 things very important. The population is aging on one side, and the population is becoming increasingly diverse on the other side. So these kinds of truth and reality backed by statistics, backed by observations. I've been talking to lots of people in Fort Mac today, and everybody says, yes, our population has changed. It has increased, and diversity has increased. So everybody can see that. You don't need Statistics Canada to prove that. But sometimes we need some science behind stuff to make them acceptable. And that is where this comes in. So those 2 things are happening. More on aging side. In 2011, the ages between 15 and 64, of course, that's a working force. That's the force that is at work or doing work. Was 68.5%. That number dropped to 66.5%. So the workforce is aging. You have to fill that vacuum with something. But the good news is, in Canada, immigration is huge. This one, I'm just going to bring this statistics for immigration, even though it's not on my slides. The current government, Trudeau government, is planning to bring 300,000 people. That, in terms of population, that will be the 3rd largest city in Alberta. Because the 1st largest city in Alberta is Calgary, which is about 1.2 million. Edmonton is about 900,000 people. So 300,000 people is bigger than Red Deer, which is the third city in Alberta. That's how big the number is coming in, because we have that aging pop situation. There is need for that. But the question you may be asking is how many of these people are coming to Alberta, and maybe how many to Fort Mac? I can narrow it down to Alberta. Alberta is looking at about 50,000 people. And most of these people are in the job market because they are from the economic class migration. So if you have a population of about 50,000 people in a year, that's half of the population of Red Deer. Red Deer is about 90,000 to 100,000 people. So if you have half of the population of the third largest city coming in, you have to be taking up with this opportunity. There is definitely an opportunity and advantage there because the numbers are just impressive. Of course, this growth is the largest since 1851. So this is exactly why I'm marrying the two things. I'm marrying increase in diversity and aging on one side. Those two factors, we cannot ignore them. And this graph is from Canada Press, of course, it's from Statistics Canada. You can see children, the numbers are going down between the ages of 14 and 24. And seniors, of course, increasing. So if you have an aging population, definitely something has to be done. Else, we're not going to have people to do work. Those of you who are hiring people, you will not have people to hire. We don't want that scenario. So what do? You bring people from outside. We already know that the Canadian growth rate is just 5%. So if you talk of 5% of 35 million, that's a very small number of people we need to bring from immigration. And if you look at this picture, it was just to paint the picture in another way. And some of them are a bit imaginary, but it's just to shed light on what I'm talking about. So if you have immigrants here, unskilled, and the population is growing, and you have another one here, so here, mixed with Canadians, of course, people who are born Canadians. This is mixture of skilled and unskilled. This is what we're currently going into, more or less. This is where I would say we are coming from. More Canadians and less immigrants, and the population is skilled. Well, a mixture of unskilled, they're mostly skilled, but also aging. While you also have this scenario where you have only Canadians, skilled and unskilled, and also aging. But you also have this scenario which is not aging, which means the population is growing, there's enough people to hire, there's future. So I think this third quadrant is where we want to be. And this is where I'm looking at, because you don't want a workforce that is aging, neither do you want a workforce that is not skilled and unskilled. Of course, for immigration, I know that because most of the people who come to Canada are very, very skilled, because the government is very strict on the qualifications of the people, the accomplishments, the different kinds of skill sets. So this is where we are headed, and this is where we want to be. So which means this is where you have to be positioning your company. So of course today I'm sharing my lessons from my own experiences or observations or stories I've been writing about. Of course, some principles to lead and how to build some of this network into the multicultural communities. I understand that we have somebody who wants to really hear more about that. And also some emphasis on some things that I call false normalities, because it's what has been happening, but it's not fixing the problem. We have some issues that need to be fixed, and some 7 steps to go. And of course, there are challenges. So throw some light on how to overcome some of those challenges. So the first principle here is network followed by listen. So I'm going to talk a bit about network. Network, of course, is that support base. So there is no way we can even be talking about connecting with multicultural communities if we don't have a network. And the question I always get asked in most of the presentation is, how do I create this network? And the first thing is I always say charity begins at home, which means you start right in your organization. If you have people from multicultural communities, start that connection with them before they start taking you to their events, before they start bringing their food for you to try, before they start connecting you to their friends' friends. Or if you don't have that, then maybe you have to go online and look for events coming up. I had a long list of events coming up in Fort McMurray from visiting today. I'm going to go through some of those events, from the human rights events to Multicultural Expo. All these events are opportunities to meet. Listen, of course, I cannot emphasize about listen more, because there is no way we can build a relationship without listening to what the other people are saying, without trying to understand what they are saying without being nice and talking in a way that encourages people to share their stories, to get to know them, to understand them, appreciate them. Sometimes I've seen some organizations use different strategies, awards. They use just emails appreciation, they use thank you cards. So all the different strategies to appreciate. Engagement is crucial, because if we don't engage people, then nothing will happen, which means we have to make that effort to make the move to meet these people so we can engage them. We have to sustain these relationships, which means that it has to be an ongoing process. We have to have that enthusiasm to do it. They say a lot is said in body language than in words, which means that it's easier to say, oh, I like what you're doing, but your body language doesn't reflect that. So that is important. And of course, this has to be a persistent thing. It doesn't work in one day. We need consistently and ongoing. So charity begins at home, and these are some of the situations that we'll face. I will explain a bit. For those who are following the media, you should surely have observed this already. So a good example would be the shooting in the community. Of course, this one I would say is not in Fort Mac, neither, it might not be in Canada, but in the US, this is common. You have a situation where there's a police shooting of maybe somebody in the minority community. The person is killed, there's outrage in the community, there's a lot of march in the community, people get out there, there's rally, and there's talk and promises from the government, and life goes back to normal, nothing happens till the next time there is another shooting. We go through this circle again and again and again. So I call this false normality, because we go back to normal without fixing the problem. Well, when I presented this before, I was told by some people that, well, you're picking on law enforcement. So let's see if we have that also in businesses. Yes, we do. So there might be a situation where an organization is criticized for not being diverse or not having people from minority groups, and they hire somebody, that becomes a big talk of the organization. Oh, where we're diverse, we have this one guy who is working for us, or this one lady from this or that country, and we are good. So this, after that, everything goes back to normal, we go back to business, and it goes again. When there is another noise, there is something that happens again, triggers a reason or a backup to not do anything, and we go back to normal. So this circle continues. There is also the option of maybe it's just a policy that is not popular and there is noise about it, and we go back to maybe making a small change, back to normal, and life continues, waiting for that day again when people are going to get up and not be happy with something. So this again is another circle that I call circle of false normality, because we seem to rush quickly to normality without fixing anything. Of course, the obvious question is, how do you fix this? So let me come to that. This one is most recent. We might know, for those who are following the current situation in the different political parties, we saw what happened with the UPC, and most recently our Better Party too. One candidate had some issues, or one candidate said something that wasn't popular or that wasn't in line with the way things are supposed to be set in that space. There was outrage, the candidate was taken off or taken down, eliminated, back to normal. Everything is good. We wait for the day that another candidate is going to say something. Again, this cycle just keeps going. Before, we thought it was one political party. Now we realize that all the parties are facing the same situation. So these are some of the key stuff that I'm going to share, which is, if we are going to lead by example, then we have to really do something that is tangible. For example, if we have those situations of false normality, we should have policies in place that checks that. To me personally, I don't know if eliminating a candidate or changing a policy is going to solve the problem. I think more we should go to the root causes of it, the root causes of some of these issues. In the case of a candidate saying something, the root cause of it is choosing the right candidate from this get-go. There are a lot of wonderful people. We shouldn't be choosing somebody who is questionable in terms of their past, in terms of their associations, in terms of what they share or how they make decisions on what to put in public. In the case of organizations, I think if there's a solid diversity and inclusion policy in place and action, and this is being implemented, we shouldn't be even getting to people from outside coming to tell the organization what to do or what should be done. So it just tells me there's a gap inside that needs to be filled. For the political situation, if somebody does something, I don't know if just eliminating them, which is what the public wants to see, solves the problem. Maybe there have to be some form of, I will call it re-accommodating people, maybe sitting them down and going through maybe a process of reorienting how they see the future, or how they see the party, or the mandate of the party, which is what I think the organization needs to do, rather than just saying you are out and the problem is fixed. But you are out, the problem is fixed, but you are back into the community and you continue doing what you've been doing, rather than we trying to fix it at the source, which is fix you, or have that conversation, or have that interaction. So there is no way we can change our opinions without being convinced about this deeply from our own personal beliefs, thoughts, and opinions. It has to be from there. It's not something that's going to change. Because most of the time, diversity and inclusion is not something that is popular in most organizations, which means that the person who is leading it has to really be able to influence and convince people to listen and take it serious. I remember at one event I went to, one lady who is a popular editor in one of the major media in Edmonton told me, oh, because diversity and inclusion is not sexy, so nobody cares. Yeah, but the question you leading it is, how do you make it sexy? How do you make it such that everybody wants to be interested in it? How do you make it such that people take it serious? It means we have to look at our organizations. We have to look at the mandate of our organizations, or the priorities of our organizations. If the priority is growth, then we have to find a way to associate it with growth. If the priority is revenue, then we have to find a way to connect it with revenue. If the priority is connecting to skilled labor force that's going to last for a long time, then we have to connect it to that. If it's about having a good image, making us look good, leading in a space that most people are scared to, then we have to do that. The good thing is that some organizations, even right here in Fort Mac, are doing something. I heard something that Multicultural Association of Wood Buffalo is doing with the Fort McMurray Airport, and they've already gone through trainings for the senior leadership, and they are now looking at going with the entire organization. So some people are doing something. Is there something that the airport guys know that most other organizations don't know? The answer is definitely yes. That's why they are doing it, and most others are not doing it. Beyond, I also know Boston Pizza is also interested. But beyond Fort Mac, I also know of lots of other examples. For my friend who is from Calgary, if you go to Calgary, TD Calgary, the one in Chinatown, they serve you in Chinese, in Mandarin. So that shows the extent to which some organizations are taking it. If you serve in Mandarin in the popular Chinese part of the city, or in Punjabi or in Hindi in the popular Indian part of the city, or in Somali in the popular Somali part of the city, you definitely get more people from that background, which is good business. And then we are connecting it to how you can make it a profitable thing. But at the beginning, when somebody who speaks Mandarin was hired, it might just seem like, oh, this is just for diversity. But now it becomes a good business move. And I see a lot of the other organizations are doing that now. Interesting to also note that a lot of the bigger organizations, corporations, are ahead of this than the smaller ones, which is obvious. They have the resources to dedicate to that kind of change. In the same way, we have a lot of the politicians also doing a lot of this stuff. I think also because politicians have a short shelf life, and anything that is very cosmetic, easy to see, makes sense. So most of the time we make decisions based on, of course, emotions, not logic. But whichever way you can get people to commit, whether it's going to be through logic or emotions, you need that happen, because you need people to follow. You need a following for this to work. It's going to be a difficult journey because you are going to be lonely for a start. You have to be able to rally people to support it. I remember when I was doing this from the beginning, I had a lot of people telling me, oh, nobody's going to support this. People here don't like that kind of conversation. People don't like that kind of stuff. But now today, I think we have over 40,000 reach in a week. And we also have lots of people who now wants to be part of this. Now it's becoming that topic that people want to be part of it. Not there yet, but there's a lot of progress. Because having 3 presentations in a month to talk about diversity and inclusion tells me that the journey is really going to somewhere. People are becoming more interested. But it's because it has to be connected to something that matters to people. If what matters to the organization is money, image, bottom line, whatever the case, then we have to make that case. I remember at an event I was presenting, one lady said, our bosses don't want to hear this, or our bosses are not buying in. Which comes back to, how do you get them to buy in? What is it that the executive director or the CEO believes in. Is it the image, the overall image of the organization? Then he has to be connected to that. If the CFO is interested in the money side, then you have to connect it to how it makes some money or it saves some money. So we have to find a way to connect. So these are some of the steps that I think organizations are used, but there's more conversation to this than it looks. So we have to first check what is it that we are doing. I know a lot of time organizations find the easier things to do, like we are doing a diversity and inclusion seminar or training. So we are diverse or we are good. But there's a lot to that because it's an ongoing process. Diversity and inclusion is a journey. It doesn't end. It may start somewhere. Every organization is at different level. Every individual is at different level. It's not something that's going to end. It's just something that the moment you are no longer doing stuff, maybe yours has ended, but the organization continues. So it doesn't end. It doesn't end anywhere. You just have to keep going. There have to be engagement. There is no way you can work without bringing others. As you know already, as a leader, people have to follow you. If we put out stuff and we don't get people responding or showing interest, then we are failing in our leadership. We have to be able to put out stuff and people say, yes, I'm coming. If we put out stuff, for example, we have our diversity awards in March and we don't get people committing, people nominating, then there is something wrong. We have to connect it somehow such that we get people coming out and say, hey, I want to nominate A or B or C, or I want to come to the awards. Or whatever we are doing, people have to commit. If people are not committing, then there is a problem. Most importantly, we have to act. If we don't act, then nothing happens. The difference between, of course, success and failure is action. But after that, there is something that we benefit, which is the success, then we have to be able to share. When we share, of course, we come back to evaluate, make sure everything is fine. What is it that has worked that we can do more? What is it that didn't work that we can change how it's done or eliminate it? We have to sustain it. As I said before, it's an ongoing process. It doesn't end. So there is no place where we stop. Celebration is fine because there's something that you've acquired, which is new. New status, maybe image. Maybe you have now more staff that are from diverse backgrounds, but also for businesses, I see much more potential too, because for a business, you may have potential new customers who you are not reaching to. TD Bank knows that very well. The reason why they have the Mandarin serving location. You may have, for some non-profit, you may have lots of volunteers. Interestingly, some of these volunteers are skilled because they came through the economic class migration program in Canada. They certainly are very qualified, very skilled. They do not have a job because, or they are underemployed because they can't get the job that they want. And you have a wealth of experience, wealth of knowledge ready to harvest. Why are you not using it? This is a pool of talent. To me, it's a colossal waste because you have these lots of skilled people and you have this organization that need them. For non-profit, they might be good volunteers to gain some Canadian experience, since nobody will hire them without the Canadian experience. So that tells me that you are giving them that gateway. So there is certainly an opportunity there, a wealth of experience, wealth of talent and knowledge to tap into. For some other cases, they might also down the road become board members with the skills that they have. They may become sponsors. They may become long-term volunteers. So there's just too much resources to tap into. For businesses, you have people who can be intern in the future. You need internships. You need people to help build 1 or 2 projects. There are a lot of skills there. So to me, it's a very, very important part. A very important piece that we have to take serious. These are the common excuses that I hear. I just confirmed that there is no will because the person is not willing to take action. So there is no strong enough will and desire to act. And this, I'm going to be looking at how we can come across some of them. Another situation is cost. Oh, we don't have the money. There's also interest from colleagues. Oh, my colleagues are not interested. I can't do this by myself. My bosses are not buying in, which is a common one. There's no return on investment. It's not worth the energy. It's not worth the time. We don't have time. We are too busy. Our staff are already doing training, so we don't have to worry about this. We are fine. We have this guy working, so we don't need to worry about this diversity thing anymore. Of course, we're already working on an action plan, so we can take forever to finish the action plan, and we are doing something, so we don't need to worry. So, some suggestions. I think there is no other way to move ahead with the will and the desire to take action besides connecting it to something that that adds value to the company. There is no other way to connect it besides looking at the growth importance, maybe that's what the organization cares, or the bottom line, or having new employees who are diverse, making us look good, making us look nice in the public face, or there may be some benefit from savings money because others who have come, they take quick turnover, and these guys, when they come in, you train them, they will last longer. Or they are overqualified, which is good. You have people who are more qualified than the job. You have a huge pool of talent and skills there to tap from, which is surprising to me. Why an organization will not want to tap from that? That's huge. So they have to be connected, and once there is that connection with logic, whether it's logic or emotions, it doesn't really matter. Whichever way get that going, then now they become that desire to act. And once there's that desire to act, cost goes out of the window, because nobody's going to be talking about cost anymore if this is going to increase the bottom line, if this is going to be cheaper to hire these people here than to go bring them from abroad, or if this is going to be cheaper to train these people because they're already skilled than to go start training people who have no clue about what your organization is trying to achieve. And if there is that aspect, there is no cost becoming an issue, which of course, even talking of cost, most of the time people who do diversity and inclusion work in organizations, they do that as volunteers. Most organizations don't pay any staff from outside. I know some bigger ones do, but most just use somebody who is a volunteer within the organization, which means every staff that gets on that project is a volunteer. They all just help during their time when they want to commit to it. So if they are all volunteers, then there have to be a reason to get the staff members excited about it. Staff members, maybe they want to be, I realize one thing that people like is making a difference. They like that line of, oh, you're going to be making a difference, you're going to be helping people. People like to feel good, they want to help. The staff also want to be part of something that they think will work. And of course, you have to get other people who are higher up in the organization to buy in, which that just have to happen for it to be successful. That's where the bosses and the shareholders comes in. If you've identified that one champion in the organization's hierarchy who is already buying or leaning towards this direction, it's very easy for them to go sell it to the other bosses and shareholders and the other executives, and then it's easier to get everybody in. Then return on investment is not a big deal. There is a return. It's worthy of doing it. So most of the other stuff disappear because the major things are already captured. Of course, staff going for training will be one of the items, but most importantly, as I said in the other slide, here we have to start with an audit. So before just jumping to trainings, we have to even know what are we training people for. What is the biggest problems that our organization is facing? Is it that we are just not having people from other backgrounds working with us, or we are not an inclusive and a friendly and a welcoming workplace, which is a completely different story? Or is it that we don't know how to deal with even customers who are from other cultures? It's not only just staff. There are lots of issues around here. We need a concrete audit. What are we already doing, or what are we thinking of doing, or what have we done? We have all those questions that need to be answered before we go to choosing one of the issues of solving problems like training and so on, or hiring somebody, or working on an action plan. We have to start by finding what exactly is the problem. Once we know the problem, then it's easy to go to the rest. So let me run through some of the stuff I found in Edmonton, in Fort Mark. So we have some of the organizations here that are really, really doing some work on the ground, because I thought I should share that as well, and using examples from here. So there is also the Multicultural Association of Wood Buffalo. I mentioned that already. I had a wonderful time with them today. They are doing a fantastic job, and they have a long list of events in this community, which includes events like human rights event. They have events on racism. They have a multicultural expo. They have almost like 10 events in a year. There is no reason why if we don't have staff in our organization, we cannot go there and connect or find potential hires from those communities. There is also another organization called Newcomer Interagency Network. Not really an organization, but it's a collection of organizations that are working in that space. And that also has another connection with another coalition of organizations called Local Immigration Partnership, where most of the organizations working with newcomers come together and share resources, share experiences, connect with each other, All these organizations are right here in Fort Mac. There is also the one from the municipality of Wood Buffalo, which is a council, a council appointed for the regional advisory committee on inclusion and diversity. These ones are all right here. So all these organizations do lots of different stuff. They have a huge network of different communities. I checked with the organizations I met. Some of them have almost the same numbers of numbers of communities that are biggest here. I realize that the biggest communities are the same across Alberta. They're still the biggest, still being the Chinese, the Indian, the African, the Arab. They are still the biggest communities, I realize, all over the place. And I also noticed that there is a census coming up in 2019 carried out by the municipality of Wood Buffalo that's going to give some concrete numbers into what was the proportion in the different communities here in this municipality. So there are all those information for those who need them, and most importantly, there is the opportunity to connect with some of the organizations that are doing some stuff in the community too. They too have lots of contact. I saw YMCA at the event today. They might not be directly immigrant or minority or newcomer organization, but they are also doing lots of good work with others and also with some multicultural communities. I saw other organizations like Hope and also other organizations like those who organize Black History Month event, like the one that is big in the Black History Month period, that's January, February, March period of the year. So all these different stuff are happening. There is no way we can connect with this organization because they are there, they are doing stuff. The events are shared on Facebook, they are shared on other social media platforms, they are on Google, so we can find them. With our magazine, Diversity Magazine, we do a lot of sharing of those stories too, of those organizations in Edmonton, Calgary, Red Deer. Thanks to the Chamber of Commerce making us come here, we are going to start doing a lot for Fort McMurray too, and we already have a lot of interviews today which we are going to be sharing, because there are lots of good work on diversity and inclusion happening right here, and we cannot afford not to share those stories with our audience across Alberta and beyond. So on this note, I would say, of course, it's not the strongest organism that survives. We know that. Adapting to change is the name of the game. It's not about survival, but it's about adapting. We have shown clearly with statistics that we have two issues that are going on. One is increasingly diverse population and an aging population. We have to find that middle ground to solve this problem, because if we don't, it's going to creep up to us. We know lots of organizations that have disappeared for not adapting to change. A good example will be Kodak. We know what used to happen with our films. Today, everybody has a camera on their phone. Nobody goes to buy Kodak camera anymore, where you have to take the video, then go and watch the pictures and all those hustle.